How the hell are you, YouTube? Thanks for joining me. My name is Brain Smasher, and today I bring to you something a little different than I'm used to. You know, this is mostly a metal channel. I primarily focus on black metal and stuff like that, but every once in a while I think it's important to share music that isn't metal. And I know this is an often requested thing on my channel, and I realized just the other day that I haven't done this since December. And it kept seeming like December wasn't that far away until I realized it's almost June. So this will be my third installment of non-metal albums that you might be surprised that I listen to. While I flap my gums, we're going to be listening to the sleek stylings of Henry Cowell. This is the album Western Culture. This is the only Henry Cowell album that I have, but I would love to have more, but I would also love to have more room for more albums in my CD collection. Anyways, highly experimental, sort of noisy jazz rock kind of stuff. Of the avant-garde mix, kind of like maybe almost a Zool type band almost. Anyway, so yeah, this is Henry Cowell's Western Culture, Fred Frith's first band, and Fred Frith is one of my heroes. Love those clanging, clashing sort of horn sounds going on. So yeah, this stuff is just like all over the place, tons of different genres. The only unifying thing is that I like them, and they definitely aren't metal. So in no particular order, and that's really all these have in common with one another. This is Murs Bo's Pulse Demon. Murs Bo is an artist that has highly influenced me, but I don't have very many of his albums. One of those intimidating artists that have a discography that goes on, first of all, it goes way back into the 1980s, maybe early 1980s. To mid-1980s, and probably has somewhere around 125 albums since then. He even has a Murs box set, which has 30 CDs in it. So to find the right Murs Bo album would be pretty difficult for any artist. But honestly, I feel like every time I check in with Murs Bo, it's been a while, I'm always impressed and I'm always highly entertained. Pulse Demon just happens to be the one that I picked up because it's on Relapse and Release. This is probably his most well-known record, and it's probably because it's his harshest, and it's probably because it came out on Relapse. It sounds quite a bit like his brethren Masana. It's that fucking harsh. If you know what I'm talking about, Masana is pretty much the harshest of the noise there is out there. Rectal Anarchy by Masana is just one of the most fucking destructive records I've ever fucking heard. This is a little bit more listenable, and I would say if you happen to be curious about Murs Bo, Japanese artist, works with laptop and sampling and live instrumentation and noise. Really just has run the gamut as far as ways to create noise, but somehow just manages to find a way to exude his own personality and recognizable stamp on all of his albums, and I think it's phenomenal. Anyway, so this one is really nasty. If by chance you happen to be curious and check in with Pulse Demon and you find yourself saying, it's a little bit too noisy for me, look around. You know, there's lots of different eras to choose from and sort of side projects and different eras, like I said, and experimentations to choose from, whatever. So that, Murs Bo. Next is Blaze Foley. I've definitely talked about Blaze Foley on my channel before, but I can't say it enough. Blaze Foley is one of my favorite artists. A country singer, folk singer, from the late 70s, early 80s. Now, had a tragic story about his life and of just nothing but heartbreak and heartache. There's an incredible documentary made about him. I think it's called If I Could Fly. But incredible songwriter, just emotionally draining kind of stuff. So a lot of times when I feel myself just like stressed out about something or just can't get something off my mind or whatever, it's nice to listen to Blaze just talk and sing so emotively about some subject that was so dear and dire to him at the time. It just kind of makes whatever is on my mind feel so much smaller in comparison, and in a way just kind of melts away whatever is going on. And I love that about him. His proper studio albums, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty much shit. But there are some posthumous collections that are amazing. And this is a live album, live at the Austin Outhouse, which was a bar that he played at really frequently when he was alive in the 80s. I think he died in like 89 or so by shotgun to the stomach. Blaze Foley, check out Live at the Austin Outhouse. If you're into anything like Townes Van Zandt, just emotive and like depressing singer-songwriters, this guy definitely deserves a lot more attention than he has. So, picking up on a completely different genre, here we have the Shaggs with Philosophy of the World. This is pretty much rock and roll's most infamous album. Not that it's really a rock and roll album, but it's got such an amazing story behind it, and to know what the Shaggs, went into the creation of the Shaggs, and to listen to what they created is such a fascinating character study on humanity and musicians. Basically, as the story goes, a father of these three girls, who were all in high school at the time, went to a fortune teller in the late 1960s, and the fortune teller said that your daughters will form a rock and roll band and become very famous, and you will be a millionaire. He leaves the fortune teller, he goes and buys them all instruments and forces them to all practice in the garage till their fingers are bleed, basically. They wind up recording and writing this album, which is one of the strangest things you will ever hear. What the fascinating thing about it really, I guess, is that you can't necessarily say that it's bad, because it doesn't sound like anything ever recorded in the history of mankind. They obviously didn't wind up becoming millionaires, but they will forever live in infamy. So basically, Dad took him to the studio, they recorded an album, and the studio happened to be one of those studios back then where they would also press 1,000 copies of your LP. And what happened was they sent Dad and the girls home with 100 copies of the LP, and the guy apparently disappeared forever with 900 copies of the album. Presumably through the embarrassment of being associated with this album. Anyways, it's an infamous record. You've got to hear it. It's really strange. Really fucking strange. Can't be stressed enough how fucking weird this album is. It's just such a head scratcher. It's I've said enough, I guess. Next, we've got Shudder to Think. This is a compilation of an album and an EP. This came out on Discord back in 91. So the album is called Funeral at the Movies, and the EP is called The 10 Spot. 18 tracks of, I guess, post-rock. And when I say that, I mean post-rock from the very early 90s, late 80s. It's kind of got some what's the word here? It's got some sort of proto-emo sort of leanings. I'm sure it had a lot of influences on more of the 90s rock bands like Ride and stuff like that. But really incredible instrumentation and great songwriting, super memorable vocals. Just really not all that unique for its time. Just really super well done and memorable. I really love this to death, and it's been a long time since I put it on. But once I put it on, I listened to it like straight for a whole week, and I just have these songs going over and over and over and over in my head over and over again. Funeral at the Movies by Shudder to Think. Next, something completely different, which will alienate a lot of you. This is Nas Illmatic. This has pretty much become the quintessential white guy rap album. Any guy that's just into stuff that isn't rap but likes that one rap album, this is it. And I kind of hate that about it, but I've been a fan of this album since it came out. Before I was ever into metal, I was kind of into hip-hop for a while when I was in high school. And this album to this day is the only one that I'm still interested in listening to on a regular basis. I don't really listen to hip-hop or rap because I don't have, the things to say about it and what to compare it to. But it's definitely like East Coast rap, early 90s, I guess mid 90s. It came out in 94. But it's just so ingeniously written. MC Search wrote the music to it and worked with Nas on, this is his debut record. Just genius fucking flow to his lyrics. I find that the music has some sort of emotional sort of quality to it, which I don't really get from rap that often. And so really, like, everything else that came after this I was into at the time. For a little while I had like a Wu-Tang phase when I was a junior in high school, but once I found metal, out the fucking door, man. But this album has always stuck with me and I love it to fucking death. It's brilliant. He never did anything even half as good as this fucking album. And as far as I'm concerned, no, neither did any other rap artist since then. Nas Illmatic. And something completely different from that. This is Namma Knack with Audiotronic. What to say about this? Namma Knack most people think of as a noise solo project. Actually, however, this album, first of all, it's not noise, and second of all, I think Namma Knack was mostly Bill Yurkowitz from Relapse, but this one, Bill collaborated with, I want to say, James Plotkin? Yeah, James Plotkin and Kip Johnson. This came out in 96, and it's amazing. As far as I'm concerned, it works quite well as an ambient record. I used to love falling asleep to this record, and I'll tell you what, if I ever direly need to fall asleep, putting this album on will do me a lot of good. And it has a lot to do with the fact that one night I woke up, probably the first night I ever fell asleep listening to this album, I woke up maybe halfway through the record, and it was because I was having some sort of like dystopian dream where I had found myself waking up in a junkyard full of like giant robots and like robotic equipment, and it sounded like there were like crickets in the distance, and there were like sleeping robots kind of whirring and beeping in the distance, and it had just such like a, I don't know, like a Terminator 2 sort of vibe to it, where it seemed like everything had been mechanized, but things were just kind of silent at night. But this just has such vivid atmosphere. I don't really get like the album cover and how there's like monsters and stuff really has very little to do with what I think of or imagine when I listen to this album. So don't let the cover art fool you as far as that goes. Just give it a listen down below like I do in all my videos. I'll put a link down below so you can click on one thing and bam, you're listening to it. So highly recommend this album. It's one of my favorite ambient albums. It's such a great thing to just kind of unwind and relax to. The other day I was talking to Sean Count Blagarath. He had some stressful day or something, and was talking about Fever Ray, an album that he puts on whenever he needs to unwind. And it just kind of got me thinking about albums that I like to listen to when I need to just kind of like take all the stress out of my body and just dissipate it out into the earth. And so I wound up sending Sean an album that I love to do that too. I don't have a copy of it, but it's Austerity. I think it's a self-titled album. Anyways, maybe I'll link that down below. But the next album that I love dearly that isn't metal is Download, The Eyes of Stanley Payne. I'm a big fan of Download and Skinny Puppy for that matter. And this is the kind of solo project of Kevin Key from... actually, it's not a solo project. It's Kevin Key and Dwayne Godel, Mark Spivey from Skinny Puppy. And this is just a brilliant fucking album. I guess I would say if Skinny Puppy is kind of more like a theatrical sort of rock and roll in a way sort of counterpart to this. Definitely industrial, you know, definitely like Marshall and electronic, but I feel like compared to this, Skinny Puppy was something that you could more perform on stage, and Skinny Puppy were an amazing live band. This to me is a lot more of a soundtracky kind of thing, a more introspective kind of personal listen. The intricacies going on in this album are fan-fucking-tastic. This came out in '96, and it's definitely a headphone album as far as I'm concerned. You can probably pick this up on Discogs for like $2 or $3. So next time you're plugging stuff into your wish list, I recommend picking this out. It's super interesting and experimental. I've done a couple of experimental records on my own back in the past, and this was a huge influence, along with Aphex Twin, on my electronic albums. Next, arguably, I guess I could kind of see that this would be a metal album, but whatever. Devin Townsend's Ocean Machine. Devin Townsend himself says that this is his arena rock album, and it definitely kind of works in that way. The songs are just so grand and memorable, and he uses this vocal layering where he just has hundreds of tracks of his own vocals just sounding like a giant choir. The guitars just go on for fucking days. Anyways, it's the songwriting that's really incredible on this. I'm kind of dabble in Devin Townsend's interest. I know a lot of people, it kind of seems like they're either total fanatics about Devin Townsend and just follow everything he does. I think he's a little too overproductive and hard to keep track of, and you know, he's found a lot of success in the last few years, and it's great to hear. I don't really know who else played on this album. He always tends to collaborate with other people, but it doesn't really matter. This is just a killer, I don't know, rock, kind of metal, hard rock kind of album that just seems to avoid all the cliches that you might expect from something that would try to be like this. And it's, I think, one of the first albums that Devin ever did once he left Steve Vai. This came out in 2001. So a lot of people, of course, would probably ask, like, what's the difference between this and Strapping Young Lad? You know, Strapping Young Lad is super aggressive and has that sort of infinite depth to it. But this really doesn't have any of that aggression. It has a little bit of intensity and kind of its grandiose nature and theatrical sort of style. But comparing this to Strapping Young Lad is pretty difficult, because Strapping Young Lad is just hyper spree and aggressive, and this is a lot more of a fun and just easy thing to listen to. It's been a while since I spun this one. Next is a lot of metal guys are into Death in June. Definitely nothing wrong with Death in June, but I feel like this album in particular gets overlooked criminally. And in fact, this is the only Death in June album I really ever listened to on the regular, and I fucking love it. And it's because it's a live album. This has some of the songs from their first album, which I think was Rose Clouds of Holocaust. I'm not too sure. And this is a weird, I don't know, bootleg version, kind of, maybe not official version. Damn it. But anyways, so if you look up this album, you'll probably find a different album cover with like Douglas P. with the pig mask on and the marching snare. Anyways, I love this album to death. It's live, and what I like about it really is that I think they don't have the studio capabilities at their disposal to add the atmosphere to their songs. And so it takes those songs from their first album, strips them down, and plays them live. It's really just a couple of guys on the guitars and drums, just drenched in fucking delay and reverb. And I just love how atmospheric the live recording is. So check out Oh How We Laughed by Death in June. That's my favorite Death in June album by fucking far. A lot of you may have checked out Death in June and thought, really not for me. I recommend checking this out if you were like almost on board with them. And lastly, I've got I think I talked about this album a little bit a couple of videos ago, but this is the Hanson Family with Singing Bones. And this album came out in 2003, but I didn't find out about it until maybe 2 years ago or so. And when I found out about it, it just really struck a nerve or hit the spot exactly, like scratched an itch, I guess, that I had been looking to scratch for a really long time. It's kind of country folk, but it's just got such a monotonous and calming sort of feel to it. The songs have kind of like a morbid twist to them in a way that not a lot of folk or country artists have to it. And I love that about it. It has such a personality just by being just kind of strange, a little bit kind of off kilter, and has a little bit of like a dark side to it, I guess I would say. So Hanson Family's Singin' Bones, great fucking album. A lot of these songs just kind of get stuck in my head for days. Super memorable stuff. And I guess, yeah, I really can't say enough good things about this album. I don't really know much of anything else about the Hanson Family. I think they got known because they had a song on the soundtrack, well, the theme song to True Detective, if I'm not mistaken. If I fuck that up, I will do an edit in a few minutes and fix what I said here. Anyways, that's it for my stack of non-metal albums that you might be surprised that I like. Thank you for joining me, and let me know what non-metal albums you think I would like. We'll see you next time.